Alright guys, IS4 is just around the corner, so I thought I would make a video about the operators that you want to pick. But I didn't want to do a tier list because I realized that I can't really give much context when it comes to tier list. So I decided to do it my way, just talk through them in the game. So before we go ahead, please take a look at this page that is released on the Twitter of official Arknights. It basically goes through some of the newer enemies. It's just mobs basically, so you can finally go through them and doesn't leak like the hidden bosses and whatnot. Just so feel free to take a read at it because it kind of affects why we choose these operators that I'm choosing right now. So before we go into the actual operators, I want to tell you guys that these operators are basically just my own experience in difficulty 15 only. There's no such thing like, oh yeah, if I want to do it in difficulty 0, because obviously 15 works in 0, but if you want to do it your way in low difficulty, do it your way. This is purely just for those who doesn't really want to go through too much trial and error. You still have to go through some because like all of us do, and I also think that's where the fun is. So let's get beginning with the operators, and I want to go through them by class and the priorities that I would grab each operator. So let's start from Vanguard. So Vanguard, the highest priority operator that you want to grab before Fang, before all your like 3-star operators that doesn't cost any hope even at D15 this time, is Ines. Ines is the one and only operator that makes the whole thing way easier. So do you guys remember back when IS3 launched, where they actually combined IS3 launch with Texas Alta because Texas Alta was so good for IS3? Ines is kind of the Texas Alta for IS4, where she solves the majority of the enemy's mechanic. So grab Ines, she is so good. There are enemies that will run super fast. There's hordes of enemies, and there are enemies that will go invisible, and if you know Ines's kit, she binds enemies so you can control the speed that they run at, because there's like this new mob that will just start charging at you for like some random reason and they charge super fast. Having Ines's bind is great. There are a lot of hidden enemies in this game, and there are a lot of maps that are really huge that you want her range to reach multiple, like to reach further, to have a bigger area of control. So Ines is definitely my top pick. I would tend to, if I can, I would grab her in the first 2 floors because she is really important. Now, second priority, I have Salic here, but the fact is that how do I pronounce her name? I don't really pronounce her name anymore, but basically think of this as generally the flag bearers. I would mainly pick her and Myrtle. I wouldn't really go with Elysium. So if you really just want the DP part, I would just still go with Myrtle. But in this case, like I mentioned before, you want a lot of crowd control, and her skill 3 provides quite a bit of crowd control. And also if you want, you can still have DP region. So yep, Salic is actually quite a great choice here. Every other Vanguard, you don't really need to bother with. Just grab your 3 stars like Fang, they'll do the job mostly. So that's basically it. Pretty easy, right? Now let's go with guards. Guard, your top pick is always Minar. Minar. Always. Uncle kills everything. Just remember that and you're basically done. Just don't forget that his E1 phase this time does feel a bit weaker because you've got to know the map really well to know when to activate his skill 2. So you do need to go through a bit of trial and error with his skill 2 if you want to like actually utilize him really well with only E1. But at E2, he just destroys everything. Grab Minar. But our second pick is actually Surtur, and the reason that being is, well, IS4 is actually a lot more friendly for arts damage, because the damage reduction with IS4 this time is actually where it decreases all damage, so physical and arts damage, so it doesn't really matter which damage you pick. So in this case, arts damage still has its benefit, and hence Surtur still comes into play because her survivability, her total damage output, and just the whole kit is still very strong. You would use her in a lot of boss fights, and you would use her in some of these mobs where oh, there are these new mobs that hits really hard, and you don't want them ever get close to like your Minar or your other like squishier operators. And in order to fend them off and to just kill them, because it's not just one. Sometimes there can be like hordes of 4 charging towards you, and you basically can't do anything about them except for just killing them. In that case, having Serta, who's basically invincible during like her skill duration that time, great pick. Now, the third guard I would usually pick is Chobai, and Chobai is actually also a great starter if you have her as an instant E2 with the guard squad. The reason is actually basically the same with Ines, and I would say that Ines and Chobai works really well together. Chobai also has the benefit of dealing arch damage and also hitting multiple targets at once, and she binds as well. So picking Chobai is kind of the same with the reason that I picked Ines, except that she doesn't have the ability to unveil invisible enemies. So that's where Silver Ash comes in. Silver Ash, having his ability to unveil a huge area of enemy, like a huge area, and having his reach with his skill 3. Because yes, we did kind of movement Silver Ash out of meta because his lower damage and being overcreeped by power creep by Minar, but his range is still really good, and he still does fine damage. And it just happens to be the case that Silver Ash does do enough damage, but he is one of the lower priority operators to grab, so just keep that in mind. You do want to grab all the ones beforehand, and then it's like, unless you really need someone that has a good reach and unveil invisibility. Let's say you do. If you never get a Vanguard ticket, you don't have Ines, try Silver Ash. He does work, and having True Silver Slash and then Minar both at the same time going swing, that feels really good. Now, there are other guards that you can pick, like you can pick Spectre for her invincibility, like I said, for fending off those enemies that hits really hard, and that would be the same as Spectre Alta, but those aren't really the main priorities that I would pick them. I would actually just pick a normal defender, because that is where like I said, sometimes they come in hordes and they don't come, and sometimes they come in a stream. So having a skill that gives you invincibility for 15 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever, isn't really enough unless you can kill them fast enough. But having a proper defender like Nien and Hoshiguma, they can actually defend off them pretty well. So that is why I have both of these operators up here. Just make sure that you understand that if you want to use Hoshiguma, you kinda need to max her. And if you want to use Nien, I would highly recommend you go with the module that has the increased defense with the extra shield. So if her shield breaks, she gets like 7% extra defense and 7% extra attack. Go with that module. That module gives her a really great defense, even above skill 2 M3 module Hoshiguma, without activating her skill at all. And then she can have extra defense when she activates her skill. And if you want the extra block for a short period of time, you can just activate her skill as well. So Nien skill 2 with module is a really great choice. That would be my top pick for defenders. And if you don't have Nien, because like, I don't know, maybe if you join the game later, Hoshiguma does do the job. So those would be my top 2 pick defenders. If you must, you will also see Quora in some other people's list, but I mean, they pretty much serve the same purpose, so you can just replace by your own. But do not try to do it with 3 stars. Remember the enemy that I mentioned that has really high attack? Yes, Spot does not stand a chance in front of that thing. That's how strong they are. So you need a proper defender like Hoshi, Nien, or minimum Quora. That is if you don't have enough hope to grab a 6-star. I would still tend to go with 6 stars because the module just makes them way better in my opinion. Now I have Saria in here. She still serves the same purpose as she would usually use her, where you would use her as a sub healer plus a bit of tankiness, but that's not really her main goal. Her main goal is actually with her skill 3, and combine that with Surtur, you would use this combination to deal with bosses. And that's all I can give you, because giving you guys too much hint is not really what I want to do here. I don't want to give you guys just the homework to deal with it, but you would use this combo sometimes. Same with Hoshi, Guma, and Yen. You would need them in boss fight. Just I'll put it there. So these are the defenders. Next, snipers. Typhon, or I just want to call her Typhon. Typhon is, well, as you guys would imagine, they release her now for a reason. She works really well. And the biggest reason that I would bring her up is not only her skill 2, which is my favorite skill personally, which I would still bring most of the time, but her skill 3, because there is a lot of situations where their enemies will go to places where all your operators cannot reach. And if you can use Typhon to tag them with her skill 3 and then let her bring the mark into those areas, you would be able to clear those areas really easily. And then she also basically solves all the 3rd floor bosses with her skill 3 as well. Typhon is just no-brainer picker. Now, if you don't have Typhon and you still want good damage from snipers because you just happen to get a sniper ticket and you don't know who else to pick, Summer Chen is still a good choice. Just understand that there is a lot of range and range attack enemies, so you do want to have someone else to, you know, bait those damage for her instead of letting her tanking the damage. But she is a bit tanky anyway, so you can still let her take a few hits here and there. And like I said, because reach does kind of matter, and Summer Chen is known to have short reaches, that's also kind of a weak point, but having AoE damage also means that she can deal with a lot of enemy horde that all comes at once with her skill 3, and the slow included in it does make her still a pretty good pick. So that's why I have her included in here. Obviously, if you're a huge fan of Sniper Squad, you can still go around and play with other operators. This list is basically just a general tips video list. This is not saying all snipers are bad. It's just for most players. Now, next we have casters. And yes, I did put Lin and Carnelian on top for very specific reasons. First, both of them are good starters. You heard me right. They are good starters. And you would see a lot of Lin plus Arc combination. So you would buff Lin with Arc and she does like some crazy damage. So that's a great choice if you want to go with that route. But also, a lot of people miss that Carnelian is also a really good pick. Her skill 2 has good AoE control and AoE damage at the same time. And the big thing is she's also really tanky, because again, there are a lot of new enemies that hit range and hit really hard. Having a tankier high ground is actually really crucial. So I would usually stick with one of these two if I want to go with a caster squad start, if I can get them to direct E2. If you can't get them to direct E2, I would actually choose Carnelian as my starter, because her skill 2 does solve most of the first few stages really easily. Now, don't forget that because they don't do any damage while they don't have their skill activated, unless you go with the weaker skill that just go non-stop attack, which is kind of pointless. You do want to know the stage better before you actually utilize them. So you will have to go through a few trial and errors, and then, you know, seeing when to use their skills at which timing to best solve the stages. But as long as you get those down, these two are great choices and will serve you like all the way down to boss fights. Great choices. And down just one layer lower below them is Ayafella with Volcano. This is very specific because there are a lot of elite enemies that you do want to deal with as soon as possible, so you don't let them hit any of your melee operators. In that case, AFL's Volcano is still actually a great skill. She bursts out tons of damage within just 15 seconds. We did kind of forget about Aya Volcano for quite a while, and that's just because her total damage isn't that high. But don't forget, her damage per second is still incredible. And again, boss fight. AFL is a very top pick. But the reason I put her just below is because she isn't that good as a starter, especially if you only have her at E1. It kind of makes things a bit more complicated. So I usually wouldn't use her as a starter, but like if you know how to use your Lin and Carnelian, you're done with them, and then you still want to go with a caster squad, you already have one of Lin and Carnelian. My next pick would actually be AFL instead of another one of what are they called? Phalanx. These AoE casters that doesn't do attack when they don't have their skill activated. So AFL is actually a great pick. Just don't forget to unlock her model, because ignoring art resistance is very crucial here. The next pick is Golden Glow. I don't know, man. Golden Glow just never disappoints. Especially this time around, we do get Golden Chalice back. So if you can stack some attack speed, and then you can stack some caster collectibles, you can just one-click Golden Glow skill and you will delete the map. That is how strong she is, and I would always highly recommend Golden Glow. Yes, I am a huge fan of Golden Glow. I love her a lot. Pick Golden Glow. You won't regret it. Next, Kobe. With Kobe, there's just one thing that you have to remember. Module level 3, skill 2. She will melt everything in front of you. Melt everything. Especially when it comes to boss fights, you would just see the health bar go like melting like hot knife on butter. It just destroys them. Kobe, skill 2, M3, module level 3. And I haven't got that done, so it's really hard to convince you guys, but I have that in my CN account, and trust me, it's really good. Now, time to go into medics. This is where it kind of divides a bit more down the priority list, but I would say that everyone can agree that Reed Alter is the best operator in your medic class. Reed Alter is actually a great starter. Trust me. If you pick the Reed Alter start with Popcar, she will basically finish majority of the stages in the first 3 floors with her skill 2 and, well, basically skill 2 plus Popcar alone. She is so OP, and the fact that she can go with skill 3 if you have her E2'd, and you remember how I mentioned that there's a lot of areas that your operators can't reach, and then if you just mark enemies and then let them explode in those areas, they can just spread the fire around with her skill 3. Yeah, really good. And again, there are hordes of enemies. Who works really well against hordes of enemies? Reed Alter skill 3. She's just so good. Pick her, you won't regret it. Now, but there's just one problem, right? She's a damage dealer most of the time. Who do you want as a real healer? Yes, obviously you can still pick 3 stars in the beginning and then save up your hope for those like higher priority operators like Ines and Reed Alter and Lenar. But when you have the hope, I would highly recommend everyone to grab Ayafela Alter. Aya Alter is, like I mentioned several times, her skill 1 is just a great AoE AFK skill. But in this case, you would actually want to use her skill 3 a lot in IS4. And the reason being is that she has one of the highest healing per second with her skill 3, if it's only healing against a single target, and that alone is really good. But not only that, because maps in IS4 tend to be pretty big, generally speaking, you actually want the whole screen coverage ability of her skill 3. So this is actually where her skill 3 comes in. If you haven't tried her skill 3 yet, it's really impressive how fast it heals. It's really impressive. So Aya Alter would be my second highest priority pick. My third though would be Warfarin. I know, a lot of people would be, other people's list, even my friends who play CN, their list is like silence. No, Warfarin is the way to go. You know why? Because when you melt the freaking enemy's HP down, when you destroy them, you don't need to heal up anymore. Skill 2 Warfarin just destroys them easily. So why would you need to heal with like, oh, silence, and then like slowly chipping away, where you can just skill 2 Warfarin and then Minar and just destroy enemy in seconds. Plus, a bit of a spoiler, she works really well in a certain hidden ending as well. Because in that ending, you need to kill the boss ASAP. Because you have a very short period amount of time to deal damage to the boss, or else the boss will go into an basically permanent invincibility, and you have like what, 20 seconds at most to deal damage to the boss. That's when Warfarin really comes in. Highly recommended. And even before that, if you have a proper tank like Hoshi with a lot of HP, Warfarin skill 1 does provide quite a good amount of healing as well. I don't see a reason why you wouldn't, like, why she wouldn't be sufficient if you want to use her as your healer. Now, even though we're done with healers, our next top pick is still about survivability, and that's Scotty Alter. Scotty Alter skill 1, if you just happen to never get a single medic ticket, I would highly recommend everyone to grab Scotty Alter ASAP. Because her skill 1, just make sure that no matter how hard the enemy hits, you don't die. And that is really crucial. You would actually use her skill 1 more than her skill 2 if you don't have good medics and good defenders. Her skill 1 kind of replaces that, and highly recommend everyone to pick that up. And once you're done with that phase where you don't have medics and you don't have good defenders, right? Once you're done with that phase, you get into the end game. Her skill 3, which another good buff, like I said, you want to kill off a certain boss ASAP. Her skill 3 comes in real handy as well. Alta is one of those operators that no matter how things goes, I don't see her going down the tier list of in IS, because she's just so versatile that she does most of the job, except for dealing damage herself. And remember her Seaborn that you can just summon, she kind of does a similar job as Aya Alta skill 3, where you want to heal across the map. Sculptor does the same job. Pick her if you don't have a good medic yet. Next supporter I would choose is, generally speaking, Gnosis. Especially if you have one of those relics collectibles where you would increase the enemy's crowd control time. Gnosis is one of my top picks because, again, there's a lot of enemies, and there's a lot of enemies that runs real fast, and there's a lot of enemies that runs real fast and hits really hard. Gnosis just freezes all of them, buys your Minar time, buys your other operator time to deal damage to them, charge up their skill. Gnosis, always a great pick. And then, like, worst case scenario, if you have just Gnosis, him alone does deal some damage, right? Worst case scenario. And we will usually pick a quick redeploy anyway, so having his skill 3 to buy some time usually means another deployment for your quick redeploy specialist. Always a great pick. It's just that there's a lot of ways to do crowd control, and there's a lot of ways to deal damage in IS4, like Ines, like Minar, and there's a lot of ways to do these things. So that's why his priority goes down a little bit, because survivability still comes in first. But Gnosis, always a great pick. You won't need his module. So just because I recommended module for basically most of the operators before, you won't need module on Gnosis. Next is Specialist. And yes, I do have Kirin Yato and Texas Alta, like kind of one up and one above the other, but these two are really the same. You either pick one of them and they are both your tier 0, basically. These two are still game changers. These two are still those that will carry you through most of the stages. It's just that it depends on you which one you want to pick first. Like me, If you're like me, I would pick Texas Ultra first because I get a lot of crowd control and I can just I can use other operators to deal damage with. But if you feel like you just want to kill them off ASAP, Yato Ultra does the same job. Both of these are top picks. If you have the chance to grab a specialist, grab them. Now, as I mentioned before, there's also Spectre Ultra, but I don't really see the point in them if you can grab a proper defender. There's one operator that I don't want to mention as much in specialist, and that operator is Ethan. I get it, you guys probably don't really use Ethan anymore, but for me, I still remember back in the days where we used Ethan in CC beta, and ever since then Ethan has been a really strong operator, especially with his module increasing his bind chance. He's a great operator to do, like I said again, crowd control. There's just one tiny little problem that I have with Ethan. He is still luck based. Let me tell you guys a story. I have a friend who also used to be a content creator. I don't think he makes content anymore. He got so lucky with Ethan. He beat this basically unbeatable stage. Not really, but he did it leakless. Usually when I do it, unless I have really OP collectibles, I will basically leak. But he did it leakless. You know why? Because he just had the freaking luck of his Ethan just 100% binding. Now, compare that to my Ethan, where technically speaking, I should have 75% or 80% bind chance with skill 2 at M3, module level 3, right? My Ethan binds at about 20% chance. And so Ethan is one of those operators that is really up to you, and you telling yourself, am I the luck sack? Am I the guy that has the best luck in the world? If that's the case, pick Ethan. If you're a normal player, you're like, oh yeah, my luck goes up and down. Yeah, you can still pick Ethan. But if you're like me, and you want to go pure skill and you don't want any RNG, just forget about him. Okay? Just forget about him. I know it's really tempting. I fell for it. And I paid the price. I learned it the hard way. Don't do what I did. So that's about it for this video. I hope you guys have a better understanding of which operators to pick and why that is. I hope you guys have a great time. I will be streaming a lot of IS4 starting from, I think, around 11th of March. I will be a bit busy before then. So once that starts happening, I'll see you guys on Twitch. But before then, I hope you guys have a great time learning about all these new stuff with IS4, especially difficulty 15. I will say difficulty 15 this time is a bit easier than IS3 15, at least before the DLC hits us. So enjoy this, relatively speaking, easy mode. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.